Hello everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Republican Forum. My name is Peter Linares, a 25-year resident of Bridgewater, Mass, and the co-chair of our local Republican Town Committee since January of 22. I would like to invite any of our fellow Bridgewater Republicans to join our committee. Please feel free to reach out to me at peter.bridge.rtc@gmail.com. We also have a Telegram group and a Facebook page that you can see at the bottom of your screen. Our most recent update regarding our Republican Party is our victory with Maria Collins as our committee woman, which occurred last night, Tuesday, March 27th, at the GOP caucus in Taunton at the PACC. So we proudly congratulate Maria on her victory. I'm very proud of her. Maria now fulfills the vacant spot for the first Plymouth-Bristol District Committee woman. Maria was up against Susan Gifford, who is the current state rep for the 1st Bristol-Plymouth District. Maria has all the qualities you would expect in a Republican with conservative values, where Susan is quite the opposite of that. Regardless, I would like to thank all of the RTCs in the 1st Bristol-Plymouth District and their members that came out to vote last night, including our own here in Bridgewater, where we had a total of 13 from our Bridgewater RTC to come out and vote for Maria. Again, congrats to Maria Collins. Many times I get asked the question, what does a committee woman or man do? Well, first of all, there is a committee man and woman for each district in Massachusetts. They are at the state level of our GOP. So the Massachusetts Republican State Committee is an extremely important vessel for electing Republicans. The committee appoints a chairman, recruits candidates for office, and sets the platform that explains our shared values to the voters. That's at the state level. While here at the town levels, the local RTCs get to vote for our committee men and women within their district who support and promote us and help us to grow. Also at the town level, we help to recruit Republican candidates, hold events and fundraisers, and support our local and state candidates. Okay, that is the update regarding our GOP. I'd like to remind everyone that the town election is on April 22nd, so please come out and cast your vote. In regards to the Republican Forum show tonight, we had taken a hiatus, as you may have noticed, for a few months due to the renovations here at BTV Studios, where they had new equipment and audio installed. I heard it was quite the undertaking, but here we are. The Republican Forum is now back, and we are now continuing our monthly shows. So for tonight, I have a couple of guests here with us. First up, we have Tim Fitzgibbons. He'll be talking about a few topics regarding our schools. One topic will be SEL, or social emotional learning, that has been added to our schools as a department. He will also address the BP Vocational School regarding its demolition and construction, which is directly related to the ballot question that the town will be voting on April 22nd. Next up, we will have Michael Arnold from Barnstable, Mass. To introduce and discuss with us all about the Convention of States. With that, let's get started with Tim. All right, now we have Tim Fitzgibbons here. Welcome, Tim. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for inviting me, Peter. I appreciate it.
Sure. So I have you in here tonight to talk about two topics. One, I wanted to talk a bit about the social emotional learning that's been installed in our schools, and the other is to talk about the Bristol-Plymouth vocational ballot question that's coming up.
Sure.
All right, so if we want to start out with the social emotional learning in our schools, I guess I want to understand it more. I don't understand, number one, why it's in the schools and why why these social issues have to be brought in the schools, and it almost seems like they want to teach it to our children, where I think that's something that should be more or less left at home, Where at school, I would think they would spend more of their time devoted to, reading, writing, math, English, science, all of those basic things that I grew up with. So could you talk a bit about that?
Sure, and yes, we do spend time on all of those.
Okay.
It's not like we're doing this to the exclusion of that. But I know you've been a scout leader for a while and in the past and whatnot. And so I think you can appreciate where, if a scout is in a certain frame of mind or comes to an event in a certain mental frame, maybe they're not going to perform as well. Maybe they're not going to get to the merit badge they need to get to, et cetera. And so what's really important in the school district is to make sure that, all of the children in the district are in a place where they're good to learn. They're ready to do all of the reading, writing, arithmetic, science, etc. Social studies. I think civics is, and I'll just put this in. I just want to give a plug to Mrs. Watson, Ms. Watson, sorry, the high school principal, who's installing a new requirement of essentially a civics class for all of the graduating students from Bridgewater Rainham going forward. So we certainly take that obligation and that very seriously, but we also want to make sure that all the kids are ready and able to learn at that level. Unfortunately, as you know, I don't want to get into the whole pandemic thing, but there have been a number of children who just have reacted badly to the pandemic, after the pandemic, as far as how they approach school, how they interact with teachers, and et cetera, et cetera. Unfortunately, I know a few children, thankfully not my own, but other children who they just don't want to go to school. They're scared of being in school. So when we talk about social emotional learning, that's what I look at it as, is more like making sure everyone's at the right base to learn all the stuff that you talked about wanting to learn.
So is this becoming something that is required, or is it something that a student opts in and out of, or is it based on what the parents want? So how does it work?
It's really, that's a great question, and I appreciate it. And it gets into a topic that, it's important for folks to understand throughout the district is we have to do a lot of state mandates. So the state says you've got to do this. How they're executed, how they're approached. They have the state in it's called the Department of Education and Secondary Education, DESE. Yeah. You've heard of it. I just wanted to give the
thank you.
the viewers at home the name.
Yep.
Department of Elementary and Secondary
and
Education.
And that's the state level government, right?
It's the state government. It's the bureaucracy, if you will, that oversees all of elementary and secondary education, which every school in the state, public school I should say, falls under. And so we've got to comply with their regulations. They have forms we've got to fill out, and thank goodness we have, all the right people to fill out the right forms, so we don't get dinged and fined and censured and et cetera by the state. But it is something that's required by the state. So, we have to try to implement it as best we can in our district to make it work for the kids, for the families, and certainly.
So you're saying that the SEL is something that is being required by the states. It's part of the DESE program.
It's part of the whole state program on how to do things and what they're pushing out.
Whether it's good or bad.
Whether it's good or bad or indifferent, however you feel about it. It's a state level decision.
Okay.
But I will tell you, and this is very important to me, because it's one of the things I ran on when I ran for school committee a couple of years ago, is if you or anyone else with children in the district or children not in the district, if you're a resident of Bridgewater or Rainham and you have an issue with anything going on in the school, please reach out to me. My email is on the website of the district, and I can forward that on to the superintendent, the acting superintendent at the moment, and just let them know how folks are feeling and what they're seeing, thinking, hearing about. And it helps us as a school committee, it helps us as an administration to be able to set a good policy and a good cadence for all the children of the district moving forward. Obviously, I don't know if you're a college football fan or not, but I was a big college football fan when I was little, and Keith Jackson always called the Rose Bowl, which was always the Big Ten against the Pac-10. This is a long time ago, people. Don't tell me about today, because I don't know about today's football. But back then, he said, I knew I called a great Rose Bowl game when half my hate mail came from the University of Southern California and half my hate mail came from the Ohio State University.
Oh, okay.
So, but you want everybody's opinion. You want everybody to show up who's interested to public comment at the school committee. And just to have people know that there are those places and spaces where you're able to voice your opinion. I did have an office hour earlier in the month. I'm here tonight instead of having an office hour. So I think I'm reaching more people. So I that's why I chose to come here.
Okay, well, thank you.
And but I try to have an office hour at least once a month, so that I can come to the school committee and report what actual people who live in the district are actually telling me face to face. And it's very important. So, whether it be social emotional learning, whether it be, teachers' aides in the classroom, class size, whatever, it's important that we all have a dialogue.
Yeah.
And that you not feel like, the school committee is someone sitting up here and just making all these weird decisions that you don't have input on. You have input on it every day, as far as I'm concerned.
Okay.
You can email me. You can come to my office hours. Stop me at Roach Brothers, whatever you need to do.
All right, so Tim's going to be a good advocate for us, is what you're saying. That's great.
I will listen. I will.
Okay.
I promise always to listen.
All right. So, but I don't know if this was clear. So they either opt in or out, or it's not really a choice, or is it just an offering?
It's really, it's not a separate and discrete package, if you will.
Okay.
It's more part of how you approach learning and teaching and learning, if that makes sense. So you understand. For example, one of the things that's very important, to me, is special education and children who are on the autism spectrum, right? And how do we approach their teaching and learning?
Right.
And there may be one child in your classroom as a teacher who's on the autism spectrum, who maybe his grandparents passed away within the last year, and he's having a rough time with that. And so that, and so you're able to help in that social, emotional space to help that child get to a point where, all right, yep, everyone's sad, and we appreciate you being sad about it, but let's get to a space where we can learn about, whether it be math, Christopher Columbus, founding fathers, etc. Let's get there. So it's not so much that it's just set over here. SEL is set over here and done separately. It's more just integrated into how do we approach the whole child in the classroom as they are, and get the most out of them to help them.
Okay, I think I understand now. But how do you think, though? Because I noticed I was looking at how the charts show is it the MCAS and stuff, how the school rates as to how the students are, like, school by school. So Bridgewater rates at whatever 50% or 48% of the level. Do you think that this program, SEL, is actually going to help increase our percentage where we become a better school in the long term?
That's a great question. You would like to think it would help. I don't know if there's any actual evidence yet that it would help. But I will tell you this, because I like math and I like data. I don't know if you knew that about me. But there are really two factors that drive MCAS. If you look and do a multivariate statistical regression on these things, and they are spending per pupil, and I can't remember what the word is, but percent of needy students or something like that. It encompasses many. That number encompasses many different things. It encompasses special needs students. It encompasses students, minority students, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay.
And if you look, and there's about an 85% correlation between those two variables and how well schools perform on MCAS. And so for every $1,000 extra you spend per student, you raise your MCAS score by 1%. For every 1% fewer students in that population I just discussed, which I can't remember, I don't want to say the wrong word again. For every 1% less there, you have a 1% increase in MCAS. So, it's really those two things that drive MCAS results, and for the most part.
So part of it's money, but it doesn't really matter on where the money's being spent as to how you gain that percentage?
Oh, yes. No, definitely that. And as a member of the school committee, I've always tried to consistently advocate, and will consistently continue to advocate for, whenever we have money that we can spend, let's put it as close to the child who's learning as possible.
Okay.
We don't necessarily need more administrators. I know administrators will tell you they're important, and they are. Trust me, they are. They are. I mean, it's very hard to run a school district without a superintendent. I'll tell you that. But if we have, if we have an ability to allocate money, my preference is always to allocate it towards students and actually further down the line toward the youngest students, because a lot of longitudinal studies have shown that the more learning you get as a younger student, K to 3, let's say, K to 2, the better you're going to do longitudinally over time.
Right.
And so, if we can lower, I won't say student-teacher ratios because that's a big promise, but adult-student ratios. So, have another teacher's aide, ESP as we call them in current educational parlance, in a classroom, the more, and that's where they say the more the learning gets done, and then, you can move up. And so, I'm always an advocate of that. So, we don't have to spend money willy-nilly, because obviously if I'm spending money way up here on administration, that's not really helping students way down here in the kindergarten area.
Okay. Well, I think we're a bit out of time for that section, so, but thank you. That was very interesting. I have a ton more questions, but we just don't have the time.
You know my phone number, Peter.
Yeah.
So you're always welcome to call me.
All right, let's get to your important Bristol Plymouth Vocational, the question that's on the ballot. So all our viewers, of course, we want you all to come out and vote on April 22nd, but let's hear what Tim has to talk about with regards to what's on the ballot. Because I know it has to do with, we've sort of already voted for the project at Bristol Plymouth Vocational School.
Yep.
And this has to do with the funding, I believe. So maybe you can give us a little bit of a history and then tell us what's going to happen in April.
Sure. So last March we had a special election, not just in Bridgewater, across the whole Bristol Plymouth
Oh, that's
district.
right. Yes.
Which includes many, many towns. I'd name them all, but I'd forget some, and then they'd get mad at me. But it included Taunton and Rainham and Bridgewater, and then some of the surrounding towns. Most of the towns voted yes that we should build a new Bristol Plymouth Regional High School, and so in fact, just like with the Bridgewater Rainham Regional District, the entire vote passes based on the entire vote, one person, one vote system.
Yeah.
Some towns, there were a couple towns south of Taunton, and I don't want to mischaracterize them, so I won't guess who they were, but there were a couple towns south of Taunton who voted no, but they still have to pay. And so the yes has already happened. Yes, they are building a new school that has been authorized by the voters of the Bristol Plymouth School District. Now it comes to each town to look at themselves and say, okay, I know I have to pay for it. How am I going to pay for it? Some towns may choose to just take it out of operational funds and say, you know what, we will just send money to BP out of our budget every year. The town of Rainham, our partner obviously in the Bridgewater Rainham School District, had made the decision we'll try to do it through a debt exclusion. So, and that's going to be, I think, the typical way most of the towns, the cities and towns, do it. They had a vote and it was voted down. So now, unfortunately, for the town of Rainham, they're going to have to come up with their first payment this year through their regular budget. And that's going to mean cutting into positions that really matter for the town: police, fire, highway department, etc. And real people are going to probably, I shouldn't say probably, because I'm not a resident of Rainham, I don't know, but real people will be impacted.
Okay.
However, whatever that means.
Yeah, it could be a good way to put it.
Real people will be impacted by that vote in real time. When you do a debt exclusion, you're able to just pay for it kind of on the side. It's a new tax, yes, there's no way around saying that. But as a fiscally responsible measure, I'd rather see that happen at about $33 per household on average across the town. Obviously, everyone's situation is different; their house values are different, etc. But about $32 per household is my understanding per year, and we don't have to impact any services in the town, which is what would have to happen if the vote doesn't pass. And this is actually, causing the town right now not to be able to finalize a budget because they don't know if they're going to have to look at, I heard from the town manager earlier this week that would really mean laying off police and firefighters versus, not. And so he's got to construct a budget for the town depending on where this vote goes. And so to me, the most important and responsible thing is to get to a yes on one and make sure we preserve town services as much as we can. And nobody likes new taxes. Nobody likes to feel like they're forced to pay new taxes, right? But the district voted yes. We all and Bridgewater voted almost 2-1 yes in that vote last March. So, I feel like the citizens of Bridgewater understand that, vocational education is a great thing. Well, let me give you an example as to why upgrading things might be really appropriate. We all drive cars, right? You remember driving into the mechanic 30, 40 years ago? BP was built 50 years ago. They have an auto shop.
Oh.
All right. So Do you drive into a mechanic who has 50-year-old equipment, or do you drive into a mechanic who has state-of-the-art so they can read your computer, etc.?
There's more electronics today.
Exactly, and that's what they need to do in an upgrade. Same thing with plumbing. Same thing with HVAC. Everything's upgraded, and BP was built over 50 years ago. So, you know, they just need all those upgrades to those shops to be able to actually produce good, competent vocational workers. And you know, there's kind of sometimes a misunderstanding about vocational schools that, oh well, you weren't academic enough to go to the college prep school, the Bridgewater Rainier.
Yeah, I get that. So Tim, we only have about a minute left here.
Oh, okay,
so
sorry.
But it's so basically you're saying you're obviously an advocate for this. You want this to happen
Yes.
because, and I think like you said, a lot of the people in Bridgewater, where it was a 2-to-1 vote on the first one, this is about appropriating the funds, right. for this vote. And we just want a better school so that no matter what you're doing for a vocational, whether it be mechanic or cooking, or they have a carpentry over there.
Oh, yeah, everything.
So it's all about upgrading all their tools and
Exactly, and helping build a better workforce for the future. You can't go on a resident Facebook page in any town and not see someone say, hey, need a licensed insured plumber. Hey, need an electrician to do this job. Hey, need an HVAC guy for this.
They're just not
you
available.
know? And so if we have a chance to grow them in our backyard and they're our children, isn't that a great investment? Because then we can call them up and we can be like, you know, hey, I was your scout leader. Hey, I was your baseball coach. You know, hey, glad you're in this trade. Come over, help me out.
Right.
And you know, and those kids who you know, I just wanted to finish by saying, you know, there is this perception that it's not for the academically talented. No, it is, because there are a lot of kids who know they want to go into a trade. They're great straight A students going all the way through Bridgewater, but they're like, you know what? I really want to be an electrician. I love working with electricity. Perhaps I learned it through scouting, you know, and I love it. And so I'm going to do that. They still get straight A's at PP. They go into their electrician. They get, you know, they go to the union or whatever they do. You know, it's not about academically and less academically qualified. It's about promoting trades for kids to go into that can help all of us in the future.
Great. All right, Tim. Thank you very
Great.
much.
Thank you,
Appreciate
Peter.
it. All
Appreciate
right.
you for letting me come in.
Yeah, thank you for coming in.
Take
All
care.
right. That was Tim. All right, now we have Michael Arnold here from Barnstable, Mass. Is that correct, Arnold?
Yes, sir.
Michael? Okay. So what's up next? We're going to have him talk to us about the Convention of States and what is exactly the Convention of States. So, Michael, maybe you'd like to introduce yourself a bit and then tell us what the Convention of States is all about.
Sure, Peter. My name is Michael Arnold. I live in Barnstable, as you said, down on Cape Cod, and I am the state director, a volunteer position for the Convention of States Action, which is a national organization. We have people in every single representative district in the entire nation. Every single Senate or House district has a Convention of States representative in it, which is massive. We've got over 5.3 million supporters right now nationwide, and over 26,000 just here in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
Oh, wow. So can you give us a little bit of history, like how did, like I understand that this has happened before in the past throughout the whole history of our Constitution, and then it helps to change or ratify the Constitution, is that correct?
Yeah, in the history of our nation, even predating the formation of our nation, there have been 30 to 40 state conventions of states throughout our history. Not a Article 5 convention of states, but the convention themselves operate under the same parameters all throughout history. The rules are well known, well fleshed out. Article 5 Convention of States happened in 1787 at our Constitutional Convention. On September 15th, which is 2 days before our Constitution was ratified, on September 15th, 1787, Colonel George Mason of Virginia stood up and said, "Hey guys, we didn't put anything in our Constitution to restrain of out-of-control federal government." Now, they had just fought a war against Great Britain for that very reason.
Right.
It's the one and only part of our entire Constitution that was passed with no debate at all. Everybody was like, what are we doing?
Right.
So they inserted it on September 15th, and it was ratified 2 days later on September 17th. And it has pretty much sat in our Constitution inactive ever since then. It truly is the break glass in case of emergency provision within our founding document to restrain out of control federal government. And that's how it got into our Constitution.
Okay. And then, well, who actually leads the Convention of States today?
Right now, the two founders, the co-founders, are Mr. Mark Meckler, who actually started something back in the day called the Tea Party, and Michael Ferris, who is, if you know anything about homeschooling, Michael Ferris is the reason why homeschooling is now legal in the United States of America. Senator Rick Santorum is one of our major supporters. Before him, we had Senator Tom Colburn, who unfortunately passed away. But we've got those are our lead guys are Mike Ferris, Mark Meckler, and Rick Santorum.
All right, so they're the ones helping to march this thing forward to get more and more states to sign up?
They travel to every single state. Their travel schedule is insane.
Okay, and then how many states do we have involved, or what would you call it, like that have signed on? What do they call that?
So what we need, what the Constitution says, is we need 2/3 of the states to pass the same exact resolution. So 2/3 of 50 states is 34. So we need 34 states to pass the same exact resolution, the same exact language, so they can all be added together to meet the 34 state threshold. Once the threshold of 34 states is met, the one and only part the federal government plays in this is they name the time and the place for the convention to occur.
Okay, and then, so what's on the table? So I see there's like different amendments that they want to do. What exactly are we trying to do here with this?
The resolution that we have before the legislators across the country right now are for term limits, spending limits, and restricting the size and scope of the federal government, basically bringing the power out of Washington back to the state capitals, closer to the people where the power belongs.
Right, it should never left.
Yes, exactly.
All right, that's very good. I especially like the term limits because I just don't understand how some people are just in there forever and make a career out of it because they just get absorbed into the swamp of it all, I believe.
Yes, and right now we have 19 states that have passed the same exact resolution. We need to get to 34, so we need 15 more, and that'll put us at 34.
But you said 38 states would have to agree, or wait a minute.
There's 34 states to call the convention.
Okay.
And then any amendments that go through the convention process and are voted yes are then remanded back to the state legislators for ratification. At that point, we started out with 2/3 to call the convention. To ratify any amendments, now we go up to 3/4. Now we need 38 states. So the bar is very, very, very high. There is no chance that 38 states are going to pass any kind of amendment that's detrimental to the lifestyles that we were accustomed to.
Right, exactly. So where does Massachusetts stand in all this? Like, where are we at?
Right now, last year, Massachusetts became the first blue state in the entire nation to make it out of committee and into the House.
Wow.
And yeah, it made quite a splash on a lot of the other blue states and a lot of the other red states because we were the first blue state to do it. The committee we were in front of then was the Committee on, pardon me while I think for a second, on Veterans and Federal Affairs. And it was a committee made up of 14 Democrats and 3 Republicans. And we made it out of that committee, proving that this is not a political partisan issue. These things are believed by a lot of people, both sides of the aisle.
You mean the amendments that we're proposing?
Yeah, the argument. Well, all we're trying to do is have the debate. We want to make sure that the people in Massachusetts have a voice at the table. As state director, yes, we want to get it passed in Massachusetts, but my job as state director is education, civics. We're teaching civics, basically. We're teaching how our government works, how this is supposed to happen. So while it would be great if we're one of the 34 states to call the convention, if we're not, we're certainly going to be one of the 50 states, and we're going to have to participate in the convention. So we
Right.
need to educate not only the citizens, but our legislators. Because our legislators up in Boston, they have, I think, 5,000 or 6,000 bills this year to go over, right? So they're busy up there. A lot of them don't even know the Constitution, unfortunately. So it's incumbent on us to educate the legislators as well as the people that vote for the legislators.
I was going. Sorry. So I was thinking about. I don't know if you want to move into maybe talking about the opposition to this. So when we have this convention of states, we have a few of these amendments that'll be on the table for us to talk about, or you said negotiate or whatever, to get to a point where we can go for a ratification, I guess, right? Of these.
Right.
Okay. Then there's got to be people out there that are opposed to this whole process of getting the convention of states together, and who would those people be and why?
There's a lot of people that are actually opposed to it, a lot of big groups. The George Soros groups, all of his groups are opposed to us. The John Birch Society is opposed to us. The biggest reason that they're given is they're afraid of what they call the runaway convention, which cannot happen. Because we went over the numbers, 2/3 to call the convention, 3/4 to ratify. Being the numbers guy, that means 13 states can put a stop to anything. And knowing how government works, it's not even 13 states. It's like one committeeman, one chairman of a committee in 13 states can stop it. Because if the chairman doesn't allow a vote out of a committee, it's not going to move forward. So the possibility of a runaway convention, while you can never say it's impossible, it can't happen, honestly.
Okay, so there's no way once we go into this point of negotiating or opening up the book, so to speak, the Constitution book, if you will, for other things to be thrown in there, because it's all has to be, I guess, legit. It's all very specific. So there's no chance of something
Right.
going awry.
Right. Let's say, for instance, Massachusetts was to send a commissioner to the convention. And when you're a commissioner, you're given a commission. These are your rules. This is what you are allowed to do at the convention. The state legislators would give Peter, this is your job. And if you do something outside the scope of what they told you to do, you're immediately recalled. Some states have severe civil and criminal penalties, tens of thousands of dollars of fines if they don't do what they're told to do. So it is, again, it's only an amendment proposal process, right?
So I'm trying to think what else I want to know about this. What else could you tell us about this? I guess I'm not really sure. What other, what about some key, for our viewers, what other, some of the primary things they should know with regards to this whole process, and maybe also tell them how they could get involved if they wanted to.
Well, for this district, I looked it up last night, just in this senatorial district where we're sitting right now. 556 petition signers are just in this senatorial district alone.
Oh, wow.
Which is a pretty good number. You figure that each one of those 556 can represent 2 or 3 other people that hold the same values, right? So it's a completely nonpartisan issue. This is not about the agenda of the donkey, and it's not about the agenda of the elephant. This is the agenda of the American eagle. This is the people, we the people. This is to take power back to us, to our local communities where we can more easily control what happens.
So are you getting people to sign on because of these 3, the term limit, spending tax caps, and
Yes.
that's what so you just really have to sell that, and they're willing to sign?
That's the only things that are available to debate at this actual convention. Now, there could be any number of amendments proposed under each one of those. Like for restricting the scope and size of the federal government, a lot of people think that we should repeal the 17th Amendment to the Constitution. The 17th Amendment, in my opinion, was one of the worst things we ever did to our country.
Could you tell the viewers?
The 17th Amendment, prior to the 17th Amendment being ratified in 1913, I believe it was, the senators that go to Washington, D.C. were selected by the state legislators. They were appointed and sent, and their only job, from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, their only job would be to say no. If somebody wanted to spend a bunch of money and it was going to hurt Massachusetts, they would say no. The 17th Amendment took that power away from the states and gave it to the political parties. Now our senators are elected in elections instead of appointed by the legislators. So The central core structure of our Constitution is the separation of powers.
Yes.
So taking the power away from the states and giving it to the political parties was a direct attack on the central core structure of separation of powers in our Constitution, and it has hurt the states, in my opinion, tremendously.
For sure. Yeah.
So that's something that could possibly be up for debate at this convention.
Okay. Unbelievable. All right. What else? I'm not sure. Now, didn't you say something about, I think you brought some, unless there's something else to talk about, I know you brought some big book here. It had something to do with
I would love to show you that. I'm
Okay.
just going to grab it if that's
Yeah.
okay.
Because there was, actually, you have what the Constitution used to be and what it is today, right?
Yes, so the Constitution, let me get situated here again. The Constitution that we all grew up knowing and loving is this little pocket Constitution right here. It's very thin, very easy to read. The Constitution that the American government operates under now is this. This is
Constitution of the United States of America.
yeah,
Oh my
this
God.
is the annotated Constitution of the United States of America. This is every Supreme Court, and this is an old book. It's much bigger than this now. But this is every Supreme Court case in the history of the United States of America that had anything to do with the Constitution.
Which means they all these different Supreme Court rulings or whatever have some way altered or changed, and I bet you there's some in there that contradict one another too, right?
I'm sure there are.
Yeah.
I'm not a scholar of this book. I haven't read this whole thing. I've read some of it, but it's not this Constitution. This is what we need to get our government back inside of. We need to get them out of this big box.
Right, because this is, the bigger that is, the more control they get. That's the way to read that. Versus
Yes.
that where it's back on more the we the people kind of thing, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. There's enumerated powers that the federal government is allowed to do, like the Department of Education. That's not in the Constitution.
Right. So actually, why don't you tell the people exactly what the, because I already know this, but what is the federal government's three? I think it's three, right? Three general duties that they have to.
Well, there's 17 enumerated powers within the Constitution.
Right, but the way I understand it, though, the federal government was put in place by the states.
Yes.
and
The states created the federal government,
Right.
not the other way around.
Right. So, but it almost seems like everyone wants to listen to the federal government, which I think is completely wrong because it's really the states telling the government what to do. And from what I understand, the federal government is there to protect our borders, protect our rights, and to collect tariffs. That was the original intent.
Yep.
And here we are today with they got their fingers into everything.
Taxation.
Yeah.
Yes,
Taxation
absolutely.
without representation.
So basically what Convention of States is doing and engaged in, so let's say, for instance, that the convention is called and not one single amendment makes it out of the convention to go back for
Oh,
ratification.
yeah.
Let's
Okay.
say nothing passes. Because to pass, it doesn't matter how big your state is. It's one state, one vote.
Okay.
So any amendment that receives 26 yeses
Uh-huh.
would be a majority, and that goes back to the states for ratification.
Okay.
If none of these amendments get 26 yeses and nothing happens, what we have successfully just done is the biggest civics lesson in the history of the United States of America. And Supreme Court Justice Antonin Scalia said he would love to see this done just once, even if it wasn't successful, just so people know that it can be done.
There's this process.
And it's safe.
Uh-huh.
Okay, when this Constitution was made at the Constitutional Convention of 1787, it replaced what was called the Articles of Confederation. The Articles of Confederation were very weak, and the only way to amend them was with the unanimous consent of all of the 13 colonies. And you can't get anything unanimous in this country. And Rhode Island refused to even show up. You know, so it wasn't going to happen. So when they say that there's the potential for a runaway convention, and that's what a lot of these opposition groups will say, there is a article in the Harvard Law Review, Harvard Law Journal, which I don't have with me. I would love to show it to you. But one of our researchers went into the National Archives and they pulled the commissions of the original commissioners that were sent to the convention, and they were all given the power to use whatever means necessary to meet the exigencies of preserving the country. So they had the power to change, to eliminate the Articles of Confederation and make this Constitution. Now, this Constitution contains Article 5, Convention of States. Article 5 is the process for amending the Constitution,
Okay.
and the government can do it or the states can do it.
Okay.
So it's contained within our document that we have this power. We, the people, possess this power.
And here we are doing it.
And here we are doing it. It has been tried before, but they never reached the 34 state threshold.
So I'm just trying to get this clear again, though, because so like you said, so you get people to sign on. When you get enough states, then you can actually take these amendments and then they're negotiated or talked about, and then they go to the vote. Or
Well,
what's
the convention will be called,
yeah.
right, and they'll choose all the officers, and they'll make committees, and just like up in Boston.
But those committees, that's done at the federal level?
No, the
No?
federal government has nothing to do with this.
Okay.
This is the states.
States, okay.
This is the states.
But each state will call their individuals.
Each state legislator will pick who they want to send to represent that state,
Okay.
and they'll give them their commissions. They'll give them their set of rules that they have to operate under
Okay.
while they're at the convention.
Okay. And then is there anything written in the individual state constitutions that say anything about Convention of States? Do you know?
Not that I'm aware of, and
Okay.
a lot of people, like there was one state that it had to go to the governor after it got out of the House and the Senate. The governors in the states don't have any say in this either. This is completely done by the most powerful people in our country are our state legislators, because they can literally change the Constitution,
Okay.
right? So it is, again, just merely a proposal process.
Proposal,
Nothing
yeah.
is changed by this convention.
Okay.
It has to go back to the states for ratification. After anything makes it out of convention and is sent back to the states, it becomes the same exact methodology that created the other 27 amendments in this document.
Oh, okay. All right. So it's just about them all getting together and negotiating, well, from the different states and doing.
And honestly, the people that are afraid of a runaway convention, they don't seem to have a problem with the runaway federal government that we're living under right now.
God, it's a mess.
It is a mess.
Yeah.
And it's a mess from everybody.
Yeah. And
know?
yeah, I keep hearing that we keep voting away more and more of our rights, and I don't know if it's because people don't see it or being lied to, whatever it might be.
That is true. They can't take our rights away. We can only give them away.
Right.
And once you give them away, it's very difficult to get them back.
Yeah.
Right.
Great.
So that's what we're doing here. We're trying to take some power back to the states,
All right.
closer to home.
So we've got about 6 minutes left here, Michael. So are there any other last comments, things that we haven't discussed you'd like to talk about?
One thing that we're doing right now in Massachusetts particularly is we're teaching local civics.
Okay.
We're putting together PowerPoint presentations. If you have a mayor, or if you have a board of selectmen, or if you have town council, town meeting, we're doing PowerPoint presentations, teaching people how their local government works, how it is meant to work within the confines of how the Commonwealth operates. And we're going around and we're teaching these classes all over the place. And it's incumbent that people become the citizens we're meant to be, right? You have to be civically engaged. You have to know how the government works. You have to know who your senator is, who your representative is. And I'm not saying I've always known those things. You know, it took me a while to get up off the couch to become involved with this, because I was looking around to see who was doing it, and there was no one doing it. And my dad always told me, if you're looking for something to get done and nobody's doing it, you need to look in the mirror. So I did, and I've learned a lot in the last 7 years about the federal government, the Massachusetts government, the town governments, the way the parties work or not. And but everybody needs to get involved at some level, at the local level. We have something now that we call the 15-minute Patriot, because everybody says, I'm too busy to be involved. So with the 15-minute Patriot, what we're asking people to do is to spend 3 to 5 minutes a week, 3 to 5 minutes a week. Make a phone call to your legislator, send a letter, send an email, simple stuff. Here in the Commonwealth, we have a good-sized group of people that do a whole lot, but what we really need is a whole lot of people to do a little bit, because we can get so much more accomplished with everybody's pitching in. So if people just would go to conventionestates.com,
Okay.
sign the petition,
Okay.
click on the Yes, I Want to Volunteer button, and that'll trigger a personal thank you email from me, because I send a personal thank you email to everybody that signs our petition.
Great.
And then I'll call them, and then we'll move into the process of getting them into a position where they can actually help us.
Great. All right, Michael. I think that's awesome. I do agree with you, because a year ago I got involved in my local Republican town committee, and I realized how much I didn't know about government. But I was always the one that I always went voting, but it was just a matter of understanding everything else. And as it continues, I learn more and more. And I've met people like you, learning about the Convention of States. I've met a senator. I've met a rep. I've met people that I never knew I'd be friends with. You know, and it's amazing. But I still think, though, that I even try to encourage people in Bridgewater to get involved in their town committees because it's kind of sad that there's really not that many. We're 28,000 people, and I just have a small group of Republicans in my group. And I just, even if they just spend 1 hour a month, is all I'm asking, just to get involved, have their say, know what's going on, because I invite people like you and others to these town committee meetings, and they learn things, and it's very interesting. So
You have to engage.
Yeah.
And even if you only get 5 or 6 people to engage, and then maybe they can bring 1 or 2 people with them. That's how we grow the grassroots.
Yeah.
Because to save our country is going to take a massive grassroots movement, and that's what we're doing with Convention of States. Over 5.3 million right now.
Wow, really? That's great. Because you mentioned 5 was a number, 26,000 in Massachusetts.
In Massachusetts.
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
Yep.
Okay. I think didn't you talk to Sandy Wright at of our chair of our Republican Town Committee, and you're
Yes.
coming in May, are you not?
Yeah, we're coming in May. I'm going to bring several members of my team, and we're going to do a very in-depth presentation about Convention of States.
I think we're going to work to get a bigger crowd, like multiple towns locally to come and we'll see what we'll do. Okay, good. Well, thank you very much, Michael. I appreciate it. This was awesome to learn about your plight here, and I'm all for it.
Well, thank you very much
All
for
right.
having me. I appreciate you.
And you're welcome.